Hello, I am Henry Borabach, host of Reef Exchanges, the podcast brought to you by the Reef Resilience Network. For over 20 years, the network has been a global leader in training marine managers and other practitioners to protect, restore, and maintain coral reefs. We do this by turning scientific information and in the water experience into operational knowledge, tools, and guidance. You can learn more about all of our offerings at reefresilience.org. Now, without further ado, let's dive on in. I'm joined on this episode by Daniel Toledo Rodriguez from the University of Puerto Rico and Dr. Nilda Jimenez from the Puerto Rico Department of Natural and Environmental Resources. We're going to be talking about their recent work investigating a new species of invasive soft coral that has been found in the reef ecosystems around Puerto Rico. The network recently published an article summary on our website about their paper, but we also wanted to take a few minutes here to talk a little bit more about their key findings, next steps, and what we can all do to deal with these kinds of invasive species. But before we get too far along, Daniel and Nilda, will you please introduce yourselves and just let us know a little bit about your backgrounds?
Hi. Thank you for having us here in this podcast. My name is Daniel Toledo Rodriguez. I'm a master's student at the Department of Marine Sciences at the University of Puerto Rico. And I'm also a dive master instructor from the Scuba School International Diving Agency. I've been working with coral reefs and coral restoration since 2012 as a volunteer at the beginning. And then when I started my master's degree in 2018, I started as a freelancer or contractor, subcontractor. And yeah, that's me.
Hello, my name is Nilda Jimenez. I am a doctor in marine biology, and I've been working for many years in the Department of Natural and Environmental Resources, which is the state government agency that protect and conserve natural resources in Puerto Rico. And these pulsing corals represent a threat to many of the marine threatened species. So that's how I got involved in working with the pulsing coral. I've been working with the pulsing coral since it was first reported. So pleased to be here and provide some information that will give some insight on the problem that we have at hand and prepare some other jurisdictions on what might be a threat to their marine ecosystems.
Great. Thank you both so much for being here. I guess to jump right in on it, Daniel, maybe you could just, some folks may have read the article summary or your paper itself from our website already, but maybe just what's the situation there now, or tell us a little bit more about what you and your team were researching.
Everything started thanks to Dr. Nilda Jimenez and the HDR Reefscaping organization. They invited me to check out if this possible invader was out there in the reefs of the south of Puerto Rico. So I was like, sure, why not? So we went to the field, and at the beginning, everyone thought the first invader was Eunomia stolonifera, the same species invading in Venezuela. I was curious, like, we might need to confirm first. So I asked Nilda, like, hey, Nilda, is anyone doing genetics? Anyone working with this Zenith species here in Puerto Rico? And in a funny way, she said, like, you are going to do it now. So we did the permit proposal. So we got the permit and started collecting samples. That was early 2024. So I started doing some DNA barcoding work in one of the genomic lab in the Department of Marine Sciences. And also I was invited to go to Caja de Muertos, which is an island south of Ponce, where the other second invader was found. And I also collected some samples there. So I started working with both pretty much at the same time. But the one that got confirmed was Cinia umbellata, the one we thought it was Eunomia stolonifera invading both La Parguera in Puerto Rico and also Caja de Muertos. And we did a small note, and we published that on for Reef Journal. And at the same time, I was working slowly with this other possible new invader or second invader, and that's how I got to confirm that or the team got to confirm that we had another invader called Laticinia ningaloensis.
You mentioned you have a lot of background in technical and recreational diving. Do you have before this, did you have much background in that kind of genetic research?
Well, I started working when I started my master's degree. I had a small project regarding tunicates or ascidians. So I started working in genetics there because the lab I was taking a class for was regarding all that. So I'm like a really beginner on the genetics, but I've been evolving through time. So I was like, I can do this with the tunicates, so why not do the same thing with the pulsing corals? Now that we confirmed that they were invading the south of Puerto Rico, so I pretty much followed the same method. Obviously, I did some research and checked other papers about the pulsing corals, and that's how I got to learn about these methods to fulfill the confirmation of what are these organisms and who's truly invading the island.
For sure. I think about the story of this or getting started and how you reached out to Nilda and she said about who would do this work and she said you did. Nilda, how did you know that Daniel was the person just to jump right onto this?
Well, he had already a background working with some type of genetics, and he had a lot of interest on what was going on. He went with us since the very beginning, trying to confirm the presence of pulsing corals, and he had knowledge on the area that we were evaluating. So he was the right person.
You started this research back in March or so, or maybe the discovery was first made in March of 2024. I'm curious to hear too, what has the past year been like, or how has the work been progressing since making that discovery to doing those tests to publishing to, what does it look like for you and your team or for the whole community of coral reef workers in Puerto Rico in terms of dealing with this invasion?
Well, regarding the project, right now I'm currently doing the corrections for the manuscript. We got the preprint in bioarchive and we submitted that to a journal, and we're receiving the reviewers comments, so I've been dealing with that recently. We're also working in a possible third invader affecting the island, but I've been truly slow, sadly. I mean, I'm highly motivated. I've been working whatever I can. But yeah, I've been dealing with I've been working with this with no fundings, so I've been a little bit slow. I tried some proposal, but nothing have gone through. But yeah, I'm still working with this because that is something I really enjoy. I mean, just being in the water, doing science, working with anything, with everything is really good. I mean, I feel great. I believe Nilda can talk more about mRNA.
Certainly, the last year has been quite stressful and challenging and busy, I will say. Since the very first report, we've been trying to seek funding or volunteers or resources, donations to address the threat. We already knew that it was a really big threat based on what was being reported going on in Venezuela with a similar species. The very beginning was just removal, but then also trying to identify which species we were dealing with, and that's where Daniel and his team came on board, and not just collecting samples and having them analyzing it, knowing that it was a challenge with very limited funding or no funding at all, but also evaluating where it was coming from, figuring out was it the only place where it was reported. We were fortunate enough to get some samples from Cuba and identify the one in Cuba also as Tinea umbellata, which in the past we thought it was Unomia, and that gave us some insight on potential path of introduction, because that's one of the main things that we need to address, where it was coming from. Is it coming from other jurisdiction? Was it a dumping from an aquarium trade, which then will guide us to start addressing the aquarium trade and some awareness, which is something that we have also tried to design and develop and implement during the last year. Outreach campaign, telling people not to lose the organisms that they have in their aquarium. At the same time, we were working on finding resources to start removal, and that's most of what happened last year was starting the removal of the patches that we identified with the pulsing coral, which then guide us to identify, or took us to identify, new patches. And then we saw how widespread it was. At the beginning, we thought it was just one patch, and then just two patches, and then eventually we found out it was spread all over the Southwest. And we still on that process of identifying or and monitoring new areas, and see, based on what we have found, other potential areas where it could be, because to be able to remove the whole thing or manage it, we need to know where it was, how wide distribute it is. So that's one of the other things that is going on. Identifying the distribution, securing funding for all of that is very hard, and we are still working on proposals, continually trying to find funding sources. That's another task on hand. And the removal also require designing techniques for its removal. We started with manual removal, which now we done remote. Then we designed the smothering with cement, which is what we have been implementing. And now we are trying to design some new techniques for addressing the ones that we are finding growing on seagrasses. So many tasks in 1 year, trying to move everything in parallel, because the propagation do not wait for us. And we already know that it's been here for longer than we thought, not when we actually saw it. So probably it has been growing out there and nobody noticed it, or if they saw it, they thought it was something common. So they misreporting it. So we know it has been here for a long time. So it has been a very complex year, a very hectic year, and we're still working on it.
Well, when I was reading the paper, what's one of the first things that struck me too was that it was during monitoring for the Xenia umbellata that Latisimia was discovered, or Nigaloensis was discovered in this way of that it's this sort of constant, like once, we talk a lot about how important monitoring is for reef health, but that it also it's a changing seascape out there, that it's a moving target. Daniel, from your perspective, especially like with the interactions with more, recreational or technical diving and stuff, do you have a sense with other divers that there's an awareness of these invasive soft corals?
Yeah, especially in the diving industry. I mean, I'll start it as a personal comment, is that we are creating divers with some knowledge on coral and fish. But I believe that we need to introduce more science into new people getting in the water, even snorkelers, so they can possibly identify other organisms and what's from local, if these organisms are all local or not. At least Porcimia species, I mean sandwich species, they are very easy to identify as pulsing corals because one of their features or characteristic is that they pulse either fast or slowly. But before doing anything, the best thing is to reach out to the RNA, for example, or the scientific community to confirm if it's truly an invader or what's the organism they see to prevent any spread and stuff like that.
Is that mostly word of mouth at this point? That say, let's say that I flew out to Puerto Rico and went on just a tourist snorkeling venture, and I recognized the Latisimia ningaluensis from the pictures from our website, and I came up and just said, would it essentially just say to my dive operator, like, "Hey, I think that's an invasive species." I guess sort of what's the state now, and what do you imagine as like what the best version of that kind of reporting network would look like?
I would say we have been providing some information to the dive shops to create awareness on the presence of the pulsing coral. So if you as a tourist go to a dive shop and let's say you rent a gear and you go on your own, you're not going with a tour, you will probably get some information on the pulsing coral, and that information, the information we have provided, indicates where to provide a if you want to report where to upload your report. If you're going on a tour, the dive shops already have this information. We have given talks, and we have give them some information on where to report it. It was actually one of the dive shops who alert us about the presence of that pulsing coral in the first report. So I think right now the tourists that come here in Puerto Rico to dive, if they go through a dive shop, they will know how to report this, and they will know what to look for it. And if they go with the dive shop as a tour, the same dive shop will probably have an instructor guiding that dive. And if they see it, they will know to report it to us. We currently have engaged most of the active dive shops or divers within the Southwest Coast already in this effort, because we have also asked for their support in terms of getting to those sites to work with the pulsing coral. So they are already involved in this effort.
This might seem like kind of a simple question, but how how often do those would those sort of interactions of a tourist or a recreational diver in the water spotting what they believe to be a soft coral, how often does that lead all the way to genetic testing to sort of have that positive identification of a species?
It might not lead straightforward to genetic testing, because again, like Daniel was saying, genetic analysis, it takes some funding. So we already have more samples than the ones that we can actually analyze. But it will certainly take us to go and corroborate if it was actually a pulsing coral. And it's not really frequent, but it does happen. Let's say maybe once a month. And when we go there, we corroborate if it is a pulsing coral or if another organism being mistaken or false ID as a pulsing coral. And we do that type of corroboration. And it also helps us include that type of information in the awareness campaign that we are designing. So people will learn more about other organisms that are here that could partially being identified or mistakenly identified as pulsing coral, so they know there are other organisms that look alike, and be them more aware of what the pulsing coral looks like. So it could lead to a corroboration for sure. And then depending on what we see, and if it looks like some previous reports that we have seen, or if it is something new, then we will collect it and then have it there for eventually doing the genetic analysis.
Exactly. And also, I mean, the best thing you can do is take a picture, show it to maybe the dive shop, or if you know any scientific people from the Department of Marine Sciences, just ask them, and we can confirm, just like Nilda just mentioned. The idea is to not touch, just look, spread the word, and confirm if it's an invader or so. But yeah, I mean, we don't want to harm any native or any organisms at all. We just want to prevent any damage if it's an invader. Just like, for example, Cinia umbellata and Latisimia ningaloensis.
Great. Yeah, that makes total sense. I really like your idea too, Daniel, of a more scientific component to dive training so that that mindset is there in the first place. I think it makes a lot of sense to me to think about the genetic testing and that material helping build the consensus and sort of the evidence for these invasive species over time, and through that documentation and things. But then also it's, as you mentioned, Nilda, it's a ongoing and growing problem. So having people out in the water with that in mind already also helps sort of connect the science and the action. As just one more sort of I often ask this as the last question on these episodes, but if you imagine a manager or a practitioner in another reef area, sort of anywhere around the world, what advice would you have for them as they were encountering invasive soft corals or realizing that they have a similar invasion problem on their hands in their area?
Yeah. First, we need to confirm. So with a picture, show it to a scientist working with these type of organisms, or ask around to confirm what's if it's native or an invader. And apart from that, just really a message for the government. We need to act fast on these type of things, because if these organisms, for example, like Cinia umbellata and Latisimia, they spread really fast and affect other organisms. We need to act fast. We cannot wait. Obviously, sometimes the permits take a while, so that's those type of things like permits, fundings, and all that might affect the reef, which at the end affect us and other organisms that live there. So yeah, confirm and act fast.
Great. Nilda?
Um, yes, I will say it's essential to create awareness since the very beginning, even when you don't have it, when it is within your vicinity or other jurisdictions within your area. Because many times the resources are out there, are the public, the recreational diver, and they will report to you if they already are aware that they need to be on the look for something. But they need to be able to identify it, to have that information previously that we have a threat that might be out there. Please help us look for it. Because if you are able, you are within the circumstance of being able to identify it, right when it is just arriving, you already have a great chance of really managing it or eradicating it, preventing a great damage to the marine ecosystem. But if you get that information when it is already widespread, maybe probably other people have seen it, they didn't know what they were looking at, they thought it was normal, so you miss that opportunity of starting to manage it or tackle that threat on time. So it is on your best scenario, on your benefit, trying to get that public already aware with enough information that if they see it, they will know how to report it and let you know, hey, I'm looking at something that looks that invasive coral or pulsing coral. So that is already being created and implemented in other jurisdictions in the vicinity, like U.S. Virgin Island, because they are getting ready. They know that we have it. It might be a matter of time for them to start having it there. So they are creating that awareness now. In our case, we didn't know we have it right here. We're not creating that awareness. We're creating awareness now, but it's already widespread. So I think that that will be the main key for a manager to start getting that public support on looking on the reef to a spot it in case like the first arrival. That would be the best scenario.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. I think I really appreciate both of you taking the time to share your information with us and help us raise awareness, both for your context there in Puerto Rico, but also for managers working in all our other areas of just sort of keeping our eyes out and working with communities to sort of empower those citizen scientists. Or again, Daniel, I'm really taken by this idea of scientific training as part of recreational diving. But yeah, so again, thank you both so much for joining us today. Thank you as well to all of our listeners for hanging out with us. As usual, you can find the show notes and other episodes, as well as other resources like webinars, toolkits, and online courses at reefresilience.org. That's also where you'll be able to find our recent article summary about Daniel and Nilda's paper, as well as a link to their full paper as well. And if you aren't already a member, please do join the Reef Resilience Network to receive notifications of new resources like episodes of Reef Exchanges like this one. So thank you all. Until then.